Welcome back, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt. David Drucker is with the Dispatch, their leading political correspondent. David, I began the program by noting that Nate Silver's prediction still gives Donald Trump a 60% chance of winning versus a Harris 40% chance of winning, and that the latest polls have Harris ahead, though within the margin of error. That is a post-debate bounce for Harris. There is no yet polling that accounts for the second assassination attempt. First question, do you think the second assassination attempt will change polls?
I tend to think it won't change much of anything. The first one, which resulted in the murder of a rally goer, and President Trump was actually hit, didn't seem to change the nature of the race too much. Although you had a convention and a swap out of candidates. But as I always say, I want to see the polling that's taken next week or at the end of this week that then is going to come out, 4 or 5 days after that or 3 days after that. Immediate polling is never to me as reliable as polling after some dust has settled. One thing that is different this time is both campaigns last time seemed to take a beat because of the gravity of the situation, and this time both campaigns have continued with their standard messaging almost immediately.
The vice president gave an interview on Friday night that has not been much remarked on. I played all of it yesterday to Brian Taff of ABC 13. It was awful for her. And she gave a speech to the Congressional Black Caucus in which the exiled laughter returned. It's not very complimentary to the vice president. I'm not going to play it again. What what is she going to do about interviews going forward, David? I just don't think she's going to do anymore. They're, as Abe Greenwald of Commentary said, they're her kryptonite.
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I tend to think the more interviews you do, the less a bad interview matters. And if they're not, all great, at least nobody's really talking about one in particular. I mean, she apparently just, did another interview for I think Hispanic radio, probably friendly, but I'm not sure about that. Look, I tend to think she's going to do these from time to time. I don't think they matter as much as everybody else thinks they matter. Um, for her, the issue is, can she get voters to feel comfortable with her leadership just as a president? And number two, can she fill in some of the gaps on the economy? I think the style, the manner in which she delivers these interviews could be a lot better. But given the tribal nature of our politics and how close this race is, I don't think it's the problem that some people think it is. Look, I think the larger vulnerability she has are on issues like the economy and border security and foreign policy to an extent. And I think it's sort of more important for the Trump campaign to plant in voters' minds that she's either not up to the task on that or can't be trusted versus just, hoping that they listen to an interview and think, wow, she's not too good at this. I think voters are used to candidates that aren't necessarily very articulate or good at interviews. It's really about how they feel about issues when we're dealing with a situation like this.
Now, the former president is very defined in voters' minds. Kamala Harris is not very defined in voters' minds. This is why I think there's a possibility for some significant change in the numbers over the next month. I do not believe the vice presidential debate matters at all. Even if Tim Walz falls over or J.D. Vance throws something at Margaret Brennan and Nora O'Donnell, I just don't think they matter. Let's do the second thing first. Do they matter?
They only matter in this way, Hugh. You and I are in agreement on this. I would say they only matter in this way. You have to pass the commander in chief test, right? I mean, people have to walk away going, even if I think you were a lousy debater, even if I question some of your answers, if you had to be president, you could probably, muddle through. That's all you have to do. So I think we're in agreement there. Unless you're looking at it differently. That's all that matters.
We are. We are. However, I don't believe, I think you're right, by the way, about the commander in chief test being the, I don't think Kamala Harris has passed that test, David. And I think
Well,
it's going to erode her support.
we'll see if it has. I mean, so far she was able to recover ground that Biden lost, and she's made this race competitive. So right now, the
Why
data
did Biden
tells us
lose that ground, though? Because people were
because
afraid.
because people no longer believed he could do the job, and it wasn't even about
Exactly.
issues. Right. But so what she has done so far is kind of, you look at the data and it says that All right, people think she could be president. And what are we talking about here? 5%, 6%, some small percentage, but very significant percentage of undecided swing voter persuadables, various buckets like that, that haven't made up their mind, but will make up their mind and will vote. And that's what we're talking about. Everybody else, these are people that have made up their mind. And to use your vice presidential debate analogy, I mean, either one of them could run naked through the streets singing the Soviet national anthem and it wouldn't change their vote.
Not a good image for Tim Walz. All right.
Well, not a good image
Don't
for
want
any of
that.
them.
No, for anybody. David Drucker, thank you for joining me. We are in agreement. The commander-in-chief test is the most important test. And voters are going to think about China and Iran and Israel and Russia. And when they do that with Kamala Harris, I just honestly cannot imagine her winning a majority in the Electoral College. I just can't. David Drucker, thank you. Byron York is next. America, stay tuned. I'm Hugh Hewitt.